Wow. Good morning and welcome to First Parish in Brookline. Welcome back, whether you've been coming for decades or whether you've just joined us. And a very warm welcome to anybody who's here for the first time. It's so good to see everyone this morning. My name is Steve Peterson Davis, and I'm your worship associate this morning. Our service is being led by our senior minister, Reverend Lisa Perry Wood. First Parish is a welcoming Unitarian Universalist congregation, open and affirming to all people, whoever you are, whatever your gifts or abilities may be, however you identify your gender or sexuality, wherever your life or faith journey have taken you, you are welcome here. Please take time to look through the announcements in your order of service. There are many. I'm going to highlight a couple of them. Today at 12:45, there is a First Parish and You meeting in Reverend Lisa's office. That's through this main door and down the hall on the right. People can help guide you to the office. It's behind the main office. For those who are new or feel new, please come and bring your coffee or tea or snacks and all of your questions about the First Parish community and Unitarian Universalism. There will also be petition signings for a constitutional amendment and a small group ministry sign up for small group ministries as we continue to sign folks up. So please be on the lookout and be available for people with clipboards. They're nice. They won't hurt you. They represent opportunity for you. We'd like to give a special shout out to Emily Wheeler. Can you wave your hand? So Emily has just joined us as the new alto section leader. She's going to be featured in one of our pieces today, so we'll really get to know her. Welcome, Emily. If this is your first time visiting with us, or if you haven't done so already, please find a yellow card in the plastic envelope in the back of the pew in front of you and fill it in and simply place it in the offering as it passes you by. After service, everybody is invited to join us for coffee and refreshments and friendly conversation through the doors to my left down to Lion Chapel. You'll follow the crowd. It's very popular. We encourage both newcomers and long-timers to carry a striped mug. This sends a specific signal that you would like to speak with people that you don't know or don't know well. It's a great way to connect with people during coffee hour. This month, our theme is our second UU principle: justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Today's service mirrors that theme, exploring the legacy of the 400 years since 1619, when the first people were brought from the continent of Africa to be enslaved here, and the resilience of the Black individuals and families. This is not an easy topic. We'll be asking to notice and engage in our feelings and discomfort. As always, we will do that together with ourselves and with each other. We're very glad that you're here with us today. Welcome to one and all.
Good morning. My friends, I have a reading this morning, and I'm going to find it. It will come. Last summer, the New York Times asked 16 writers to bring consequential moments in African American history to life. Here is one. This is August 1619 by Clint Smith. In August 1619, a ship arrived in Point Comfort, Virginia, carrying more than 20 enslaved Africans, the first on record to be brought to the English colony of Virginia. They were among the 12.5 million Africans forced into the transatlantic slave trade, their journey to the New World today known as the Middle Passage. Over the course of 350 years, 36,000 slave ships crossed the Atlantic Ocean. I walk over to the globe and move my finger back and forth between the fragile continents. I try to keep count how many times I drag my finger across the bristled hemispheres, but grow weary of chasing a history that swallowed me. For every 100 people who were captured and enslaved, 40 died before they even reached the New World. I pull my index finger from Angola to Brazil and feel the bodies jumping from the ship. I drag my thumb from Ghana to Jamaica and feel the weight of dysentery make an anvil of my touch. I slide my ring finger from Senegal to South Carolina and feel the ocean separate a million families. The soft hum of history spins on its tilted axis. A cavalcade of ghost ships wash their hands of all they carried. Friends, this history is hard to hear. It's easy to turn away. This morning, we will face it together and let it sink in. And now come, my friends, into this beloved and sacred space and let us worship together. Now please rise as you are willing and able and join in singing our opening hymn, number 153, "Oh, I Woke Up This Morning."
At this time, I'd like to invite Meredith Williamson and Jeff Cadow and my daughter Valerie to join me up here for the chalice lighting. the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith the world over. As Jeff and Meredith light the chalice, Valerie and I are going to lead you in unison affirmation printed in your order of service, first in Spanish and then in English. Nos entregamos y nos comprometemos a caminar juntos como congregación, prometiendo como mucho que queremos mutuamente
y gloriarnos en
el amor
que permanecerá
entre nosotros. We give ourselves one unto another, covenanting to walk together as a congregation, promising faithfully to watch over one another and to delight for love to abide in our midst. Each week we also light 2 candles of peace and hope, each candle representing a different place on earth that we want to lift up and remember this morning as a sacred encounter with the world. Today we remember 2 places that we especially hold close in this service and through the week ahead. After each candle is lit, we will speak the words of peace in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. Peace, salam, shalom. Our candle of peace is lit for Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, where young women from different African American countries are being sold for a few $1,000s as maids by using a smartphone app. Posts are promoted by algorithm-boosted hashtags, and sales are negotiated through private messages. May these and all young women find justice, and may this modern practice of slavery be ended. Peace, salam, shalom. Our candle of hope is lit for the Amazon and the Amazon Aid Project, which brought 500 children from 50 countries together to sing an anthem for the Amazon, a call to action to protect the health and well-being of indigenous people, cultural and eco-diversity. Peace, salam, shalom. Good job.
Okay. Hello, good morning all. If there are any of our young people that aren't already up here, I would invite you to come forward. Right. Oh. All right, excellent movement together, everybody. It's okay, it's okay. It's okay, I think he's fine. All right. All right. I'm just going to start with a quick announcement, which I don't normally do. If you normally have a child in the nursery, our nursery attendant is sick, and so in order for her not to get our children sick, and by extension all of our parents, she is not here. So if there are nursery-age children here now, please feel free to leave with them when our children leave, because they are going to go to Spirit Play today. Just that quick announcement. So today, our service is about 40 years of perseverance. And it dawned on me that we might not actually all know what perseverance is. So I want to start there. Can someone tell me, can one of you define perseverance for me? Yes. Would you like to go? No, okay. Lucas? It's about keep going even when things deplete our confidence. Okay. Other thoughts on that? On perseverance? When we persist, are we persisting because things are easy? No, right? When we persist, it's because things are hard and we keep having to work to make things better, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so something very special about today in worship is the music, some of which you've heard. And we're actually going to do something a little different today. Normally, right after we do the Time for All Ages, the congregation sings and we all get up and leave. But today, we're actually, after we speak, we're all going to stay seating here, and then the choir is actually going to sing the anthem so that you all can hear the anthem today, because part of what we're going to talk about right now is what you're going to hear in the music, okay? A lot of our music in today's service is a spiritual, or African-American spiritual. So some of them were singing as hymns, some were, when you were here right at the beginning, the introit, which is the music we hear when we first get into worship, and then the anthem are all different kinds of spirituals. So spirituals are actually one of the very first forms of like music that's sort of created right here on this continent. And spirituals first started to be sung when folks were brought here to be slaves, and then they started singing songs of perseverance, okay? And those are how we get, those were the beginning of spirituals. So there are a couple aspects of spirituals that I want to talk to you about, and I want you to listen for. I want you to think about and listen for them when you hear the anthem, okay? The first thing is lots of spirituals, when spirituals first started being sung, they were sung as call and response. Does anyone want to hazard a guess what call and response means? Yes? Yes. Someone says something, and then there's a repeat, right? So someone responds to them. So the call is the first speaker calls out, and then other speakers respond. Part of why this is really important is because when spirituals first started being sung, the caller was the person who sang first, okay? And sometimes the caller would talk about something that was really hard for them, an experience that was bad, an experience of suffering, or an experience of oppression. And so that was their feelings about what was happening, just that one person's. And then the whole community would respond. And what that did was it meant that that one piece of pain was shared by a whole community. And so it meant lots of people then carried a burden that one person might have carried otherwise by themselves. And this is a way that spirituals do this thing where it takes our one experience and it brings it to the community, and then the community envelops it and responds. So when we're listening to the song, when we're listening to the anthem next, you should think about the chorus part. That's the part that's, that we sing over and over the same way. That's the community responding. And the verses, the individual parts that you hear, are about the caller. That's the individual. So I want you to listen for that. Can you think of the song as sort of two groups of people responding to each other? Okay. The other thing is that during times of slavery, it was considered illegal to teach enslaved people to read. Now, folks did learn how to read, but it meant that if you were going to share information to a large group of people, we couldn't do that using things like books, right? So there had to be another way of sharing information for a whole community. And the way that that was done was through songs. So especially here in Wade in the Water, which we're going to hear, there are all these references to the Bible and instances of freedom in the Bible. So if you hear them talk about the Israelites or the Jordan River, those are all places and experiences of freedom that they're talking about as a community, even though folks are maybe not reading the Bible. So listen for those two things. The last thing is sometimes, which is maybe not the coolest, but is a very cool aspect of spirituals, is sometimes there are coded messages in songs. So when you're trying to tell people things that other folks don't want you to know, right? Like, say, how to escape, right? So when slaves escaped, they needed some instructions sometimes. So you need to do that in a way that not everyone is going to know what is being said, okay? And so, for instance, some scholars, that's people who study the music we're about to hear, say that when we talk about Moses, that could be a reference to a person, Harriet Tubman, who often helped lead slaves to freedom. And so when you hear the word Moses, that might be talking about Harriet, right? And when they talk about getting in the water, like God's the part of the verse says God's going to trouble the water. It's a way of saying that if you travel in the water, people can't track you. Like dogs that might be chasing after you can't track your smell because you're in water. And so there are sometimes in spirituals coded messages. Okay, so I want you to listen out for Moses, and I want you to listen out for references to the water being troubled, okay? And in this way, this is also when we listen to music, when we listen to the music in church, this helps us think more deeply about what we're hearing, okay? So the choir is about to sing, and I want you to all be very attentive to the messages that you're hearing, okay? Are we ready for that? We ready for the anthem? Yeah? All right, excellent.
Should we lead the children out in song? Okay.
Morning, everyone. Reverend Lisa asked me to talk a bit about what it was like to be a young black male in the 60s and 70s, with the important caveat that each of us experiences the world in a unique way, even under a similar set of conditions. I will tell you about my personal experience of those years, during which I moved from adolescence to young adulthood. First of all, I was a slightly built, geeky black teenager. I saw no exact role models for someone like me, and the fates that the media depicted for the closest approximations were enough to curdle one's blood. On the black side, males were depicted either as large, athletic, and not very bright, or as Martin Luther King. Both the jocks and Martin Luther King were perceived by very large swaths of America as dangerous. I greatly admired MLK, but when I was 18, he was shot dead at the age of 38. This did not bode well for the longevity of any black male who wanted to be true to himself and to justice. On the geek side, well, first of all, geeks were never depicted as black. Geeks were considered smart if weird, and since blacks were not considered smart, a black geek was a cultural oxymoron. Secondly, geeks were depicted as of two types: smart, unattractive, and emotionless, and therefore weird but harmless, or two, smart, unattractive, and with feelings, such as wanting to love and be loved like anyone else, in which case they were considered weird, pathetic, and creepy. I figured my best bet, really my only bet, was to embrace being completely emotionless and cerebral to shield myself both from the slings and arrows of being black and the slings and arrows of being a small and geeky. I believed I was intrinsically unlovable, and to ever show a desire to love would only trigger incredulous horror and outrage from anyone who saw it. The next thing I experienced was a terrifying realization as a young college student that I could not function as an emotionless automaton. Instead, I slipped into a profound clinical depression that made it impossible for me to concentrate on much of anything, which made my grades plummet, which made me feel dangerously useless in addition to unlovable. This was the start of recurring nightmares in which I would be walking down a crowded street trying to be invisible. A public announcement would sound in the air that Ron was present, and thereupon the crowd would suddenly see me, turn on me in a murderous rage, and tear me to pieces. This went on for years. When I started therapy, the most succinct way I could describe how I felt was, I feel the world, or society, was constructed without allowing for the possibility of my existence, and there is no place in it for me. It was a feeling that at best I might be viewed as an inconvenience and at worst as an abomination. Moreover, I internalized this enough to sometimes feel guilty for even wanting to inflict any other human being with my presence. It took many years of therapy and eventually lots of loving support to get past that stage, a journey made more difficult by a mental health treatment system that was not designed to acknowledge, let alone equip people to cope with, the reality of systematic racism. One of the important milestones for me was finally insisting upon and getting a black therapist after hitting impasses with more than one white therapist when trying to convey where I was coming from and the necessity of finding healthy, life-affirming strategies for dealing with it. So folks, this has not been my full story, but it is as much as I can share with you in the time I have today. Let me leave you then with one last closing thought. Looking back now at age 70, I still marvel that I ever made it to the age of 30. It certainly was no sure bet. Thank you, and amen.
Thank you, Ron. Friends, please pray with me. Spirit of life, Spirit of no name and all names, be with us now as we encounter what we are holding. Where there is pain and suffering, let there be healing and relief. Where there is fear, let there be space to breathe. Where there is sadness and grief, may there be comfort. We hold all we love in this prayer for peace, all those who are with us today, and all who are connected to this congregation by faith, love, hope, and history. Today, as we face hard truths about the past and present, may we continue to breathe, knowing that the best balm for the pain we may feel is an open heart and a willing spirit. Let us stay open and willing in all the hard places, knowing that we are not alone. Amen. Our moment of meditation this morning will be a reflection on the first question that you'll find in your order of service. So if you open your order of service, you'll see two questions. The question is, when was the earliest time in your life that you noticed a difference in skin color? When was the earliest time in your life that you noticed a difference in skin color? If you don't have a story, well, that's a story. I'm going to give a moment to reflect, to write a bit if you like, in the quiet, and at the end, I'll sound the bell.
The offering will now be gratefully received. If this is your first time with us, please feel free to let the bucket pass you by. We're so glad you're here.
for all that you have so generously given, and for all that we have received, we say thank you.
I'm on the short side. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank Reverend Lisa for asking me to share a tiny little piece of my life story with you this morning. My name is Lily Marcelin. I will draw on the symbol of the Sankofa word to share my story for hindsight, insight, and foresight. I was born in Haiti, a country that gained its independence in 1804 from French colonizers. A series of unfortunate events occurred in my life during the year of 1973 and 1974 while living in Haiti. My mother passed away in October of 1973. I was 12 years old, and she was 42 years old. I'm sorry. In 1974, at the suggestion and financial sponsorship of one of my uncles, I was sent to Montreal to live with him and to attend a private French-speaking high school. Before leaving Haiti and being 13 years old, I knew that Canadians were white, just like I was aware that the sky is blue. At this point, I would like to invite all of you sitting here to become a 13-year-old girl, to become my witness and come to class with me. My first day in that high school was revelatory. I had no clue that the welcome I received in my classroom from some of my Canadian classmates was going to be my first introduction to the insidious aspects of racism and white supremacy. Taken aback by their strange behaviors, I thought they were insane. By the end of the school day, I became absolutely convinced that my uncle had made a grave mistake, that perhaps, and by accident, he enrolled me in a school for insane children. For instance, one particular group of students sitting to my right was chanting something that was quite unfamiliar to me. The chanting went like this, in French, but I will say it in English. You, young female monkey, you eat coconut, you eat bananas. Never mind that we don't have monkeys in Haiti, and I surely did not know what monkeys eat. They threw paper balls at me, they stuck their tongues at me, and made certain gestures that I did not understand. On the other hand, a group of students seated to my left had confusing looks on their faces as they sheepishly smiled and timidly waved their hands at me. The ringleader to my left, a girl named Chantal Dumet, hit me on my back during recess time. When I asked her why she hit me, she replied that she did so because I was Black. I felt puzzled and mystified by her nonsensical explanation. She also told me to wait for her on the sidewalk after school because she was going to plant me like a corn seed on that very sidewalk. Given that I used to garden as a little girl in Haiti, I warned her that I will plant her like a pinto bean. By the way, I did hit Chantal back by stating to her, well, I'm hitting you back because you are white. The truth is, I hit her back to defend and protect myself, given that Chantal and her peers saw me as a problem, as a threat. I also perceived that their aggression would not be short-lived. The scenario of being taunted racially by these classmates repeated itself throughout the day, despite the protest for order from various teachers, whom, I must say, were all nice and kind to me. As soon as I got home on that day, I recounted my experience to my uncle and wasted no time to inform him of his oversight in choosing that school. He was mortified and not pleased with my assertion that he chose a school for insane kids to send me. He quickly informed me that the school was a very reputable and expensive private high school. And no, the students are absolutely not crazy. He paused for a second and said to me, they are being racist. Racist, I replied. What is that? As my uncle went on to explain to me what racism was, I kept saying to him, see, I am right. They are crazy. But he felt exasperated with me and insisted that my classmates are far from being crazy and could physically harm me terribly. He admitted that the basis for racism is indeed crazy and irrational. However, he noted that the people who choose to inflict racism on others are seldom insane. My introduction of racism brought me a great deal of insight that helped me not to internalize the students' ill intent. The students' white supremacy belief showed measures of nothing but barbarity, crudeness, and lack of civility. Clearly, attributes that did not appeal to my young sensibility and upbringing. I grew up in a small province with limited access to electricity in Haiti. Back then, there was a belief that people with full access to electricity, money, and certain modern amenities from developed countries like Canada or America were cultured people, sophisticated, and enlightened. Having witnessed the behaviors of racist Canadians and hearing about the horrible racism in the US, I wanted to go back to Haiti to tell people to debunk that concept. I wanted to tell them about Jim Crow laws, lynching, and segregation in the US, racism about Canada. I had a feeling that my father and my grandmother would have had analogies about electricity or great wealth not being enough to enlighten human brains locked in racial darkness or shackles. As I became older, I have had the foresight to bring a much deeper analysis to my lived experience in Montreal. Foresight that led me to never take for granted the 13 formative years in Haiti, to give gratitude for having been spared the burden of complicated tales in regard to the social construct of race. Foresight to become an activist to denounce injustice of all kinds. As you all know, stories can delight or awaken memories. They can be used to dismantle naive and uninformed assumptions. As for my former classmates from Montreal, I often send them the spirits of the Sankofa bird for hindsight, insight, and foresight. Foresight to empathize with those who have found the courage to uproot themselves to migrate to unknown places. May these classmates learn to be better neighbors and extend the warmth of community as we do here in this very church. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lily. And now you'll find in your order of service a second question. We'll take a moment for contemplation of that question. What was your first personal experience dealing with race or racism? What was your first personal experience of dealing with race or racism? Again, this is engaging with the discomfort. We take a minute to sit with the discomfort, to listen to it, to face it, to be moved by it. And remember, even if you can't locate a story, that's a story. And now please rise as you're willing and able, and we'll join in singing our hymn of preparation, number 1042, Rivers of Babylon.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay. I thought I jumped the gun or something. Alrighty. So I'm not actually reading, I didn't write this. Another black kid living in the burbs wrote this, but I can tell you the experience is pretty universal, unfortunately, So here is his disclaimer. Disclaimer, I am no way speaking for all minorities in Lexington. All I can offer is a first-hand account of my own thoughts and experience and the second-hand account of a few other young black men. Obviously, I'm not a black man, so. According to Data USA, the percentage of Lexingtonians identifying as white is 68.8%. The next largest group is those who identify as Asian, coming at 25.4%. The amount of us who identify as black comes in at a whopping 0.97%. By comparison, Brookline is 71.4% white, 15.7% Asian, 5.86% Latino or Hispanic, and less than 2% black. Lexington is an extremely, almost embarrassingly affluent town, and the systems of segregation and institutionalized racism that persist in every corner of our nation try their damnedest to keep black and brown people as far away from towns like ours as possible. The issue that goes hand in hand with this lack of representation is even more dangerous: a severe lack of information. Racism is alive and well in America. This is a fact. In our town, what exists is an insidious ignorance bubbling below the surface of our collective subconscious, a brand of racism that is instilled in the hearts and minds of young people in such a sneaky way that one must be especially vigilant in order to notice. A brand of racism that teaches black faces are to be laughed at, that black minds are inferior, that black feelings are unimportant, that black bodies do not deserve respect. While writing this article, I asked a few questions to friends of mine who share my experience, a black senior that has lived and studied here since he was in the 4th grade. When I asked if he had encountered racism, he responded, "So recently I was called the N-word, with the hard R on social media. The N-word to which he is referring is N-I-G-G-E-R. It didn't physically hurt me, but emotionally, I saw this girl as a friend, and I realized after she said that her ignorance outweighed our friendship. She said her intention wasn't to hurt me, but rather to make a stupid joke. That's the part that hurt. Because I didn't quite understand what made her think it was okay to say such a derogatory word could be funny to anyone, especially an African American. I was appalled when I saw the message. To use such an offensive and disparaging term boggles my mind. To employ a term which is specifically created to subjugate, oppress, divide, and dehumanize others in any context is unforgivable. But in the fact that she didn't even realize the effects and implications of her language is what makes it even worse. My hair has always been an integral part of my identity and has always been a subject of fascination for white people. I can personally attest to this. That's my own words. Constant analogies to bird nests were made, as were inquiries to whether if a handprint could be indented, and this was all replaced now with unsolicited running of hands across my head. My body is not yours. You do not own it. I am not an animal in your goddamn petting zoo, and you will keep your hands to yourself. My brother has been experiencing racism from as early as kindergarten, being told by other kids he couldn't read certain books because they weren't for black people, or being told he was a helpless brown-skinned person. Now he is in middle school and has had racial slurs hurled at him, here in Lexington. Is this the life we want for our children growing up here? Listening mostly to hip hop doesn't make you racist, but exonerating Obama doesn't either. The only way to understand and unpack racism is through more enlightenment and information. As Elie Wiesel, an activist and Nobel Peace Prize laureate said, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Indifference is fueled by ignorance and inaction. Stand with love, combat racism, educate yourself. And for all the Black kids and teenagers growing up in the suburbs, say it with me. I am damn worthy of respect. I am unapologetically Black. Thank you.
Thank you, Layla. Let's take a breath together. The stories we've heard this morning, they are nothing less than heartbreaking. Am I right? As a young man, our dear friend Ron felt the world was constructed without allowing for the possibility of his existence, and there was no place in it for him. Heartbreaking. Also shameful. Our beloved Lily, as a young girl, accurately identified racism as a form of craziness. Heartbreaking and true. And Jordan, whose piece Layla just read beautifully, the son of our friend Reggie Gibson, who many of you have met, Jordan wrote about a brand of racism which teaches that Black faces are to be laughed at, Black minds are inferior, Black feelings are unimportant, and Black bodies do not deserve respect. That's happening right here, today. And that is heartbreaking and true and shameful. 400 years, my friends, 400 years. What has been the cost? What has been lost? This morning we heard themes of water in the music, Wade in the Water by the River of Babylon. And we're about to sing There's a River Flowing in My Soul. The waters reminding us of that 1619 transatlantic forced migration of rivers and swamps some crossed trying to get free of the violence of slavery. I just saw the movie Harriet last night, and I commend it to you. It's a powerful story. These waters even remind us of the water of baptism, reminiscent of the Black Christian experience that helped many people to survive, to persevere. The lyrics to Wade in the Water, as Lacey suggested to the young people this morning, those lyrics are subversive. They're said to be instructions for Harriet Tubman's Underground Railroad. The Rivers of Babylon is a lamentation from the Hebrew scriptures about the Babylonian captivity, the enslavement of the Jewish people. It was picked up by many others living in repressive societies, longing for freedom. When we sing, There's a River Flowing in My Soul, we can know that this was written by Rose Sanders, the first African-American judge in Alabama and a civil rights activist. It's a song that reminds us that we all have significance, no matter the color of our skin. And for white people, that our significance has nothing to do with our power or privilege. We have been lied to about that. It's not about that. It comes from who we are. It comes from deep inside. Dr. King wrote these words: "Number one in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. and always feel that your life has ultimate significance. Those of us with white skin privilege, we are honored by the testimony we've heard this morning from our beloved friends, our siblings of African heritage. We are honored. We are blessed. We are humbled by your words. Your somebodyness is crystal clear to us. We're so grateful to you for sharing these experiences. It gives us pause that you would share so deeply here with us in this place, that you would trust us enough, have enough hope in us. White people, people of white skin privilege, people who look very much like the people who have been oppressors of your people for 400 years. Because our dear ones have shown us their trust and had the courage to speak about their experiences, we, my beloved white siblings, we must speak too. We must not be silent. We need to figure out what it is that we need to do. We cannot turn our backs on criminal injustice, the mass incarceration of young black men in this country. Can I get an amen? Amen. We will call out the health disparities of people of color, the unequal reproductive health for black women, and the disparate life expectancy of the poor. Amen? Amen. And we will join in the conversation in this country about reparations and learn how we can take the lead to set things right for wrongs done over the past 400 years. Amen. Amen. Beloved sisters and brothers, siblings of color, we hear you. At least we're starting to hear you. Please don't stop telling us how things really are. We know there's so much more listening and learning for us to do, and we can do this. We can do this together. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for trusting us. We will attempt to be worthy of that trust. Amen. Blessed be. And now, before our closing hymn, we have a reading.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise.
Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room.
Just like moons and just like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise.
Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries?
Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, because I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard.
You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise.
Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs?
Out of huts of history's shame, I rise.
Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise.
I am a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise.
Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise.
Bringing the
all
gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the hope and
dream of the slave.
that.
I rise.
I rise.
I rise.
I rise.
I rise.
Now, please rise as you're willing and able and join in our closing hymn, River of Babylon. Oh, there's a river flowing in my soul. Sorry. We sang River of Babylon. So many rivers. So many rivers. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a
Please join me in our unison affirmation as Reverend Lisa extinguishes the flame. We extinguish this flame and not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us and offer as gifts unto the world.
Now, please take the hand or touch the elbow or shoulder of someone near you for our benediction. Please take hands across the aisle or as best you can. Dear ones, never forget that we belong to each other. And that means we include all of life without condition, which also means paying attention to all of the suffering, because any part of life that's excluded keeps us from being free. Beloveds, take all that we have been to each other out into the world and be a blessing to all that you meet, and may you yourselves be blessed. Amen.